Okay, my friends, just like we had a few videos on how it works, the no ego event, a few videos back. Now we'll have a few on how it works, the no self event. And one of the ways it works is there's a change in vision between the seeing of oneness and multiplicity and the seeing of oneness and form. What this means is that prior to the great passageway and with the help of the 3D glasses, I was still able to switch back and forth from a relative to a non-relative type of knowing, or to see oneness as well as the multiplicity in the world. Once beyond the passageway, however, there was no seeing of either oneness or multiplicity, only the seeing of what is, which is beyond the relative plane and therefore beyond even the one and the many. Thus, on a strictly non-relative plane, what is the eye seeing itself, and wherever it looks, it sees only itself and nothing else. By the end of the journey, there is no longer the sensory ability to focus on the particular or individual, because the state of knowing is such that what is becomes the only reality seen everywhere. It is almost like looking at the world through a veil so that objects are no longer clearly defined. This is a great reversal of the type of perception given by the 3D glasses where the sensory form gave way to oneness. Because here, at the end of the journey, oneness is seen first, before it gives way to form. Consequently, the veil grows thicker every day, and the distinctness of form grows proportionately dim and faded. So, you're probably wondering, how is it possible for a body to continue to function without consciousness? Well, perhaps the body is more intelligent than we imagine. Despite these similarities, however, the end was not the same because the journey was not the same. In the early years, there had been the struggle between nature and grace that eventually disappeared into a powerful sense of wholeness that had to move outward because now the energies of self were in tune with the eternal movement. While the second journey also ended in unity, it was a different unity, a unity of that which remains when there is no union, no self, and no God for the self. Here no energies are forthcoming to go outward. Instead, there only remains the intensity of act, doing, the act of sheer living, the living of a nature so intelligent as to be incomprehensible and inaccessible to the mind. We already, I thought, read about the descent into the void of voids. Why do I have that as another thing? Okay, well, anyway, trust this. The descent into the void of voids, identification with Christ. You remember before on the beach where she saw that nothingness and then she had to go get a beer? Well, this is more on that nothingness and how she identified with Christ in this time more than at any other time in her life. Christ had expected a resurrection just as I had expected to see, but obviously it hadn't happened. Instead of glory, we had seen nothing. Nothing perhaps but the futility of our lives and even the pointlessness of our deaths. Yet coming upon him unexpectedly in the passageway, I knew a closer identity with him for having been mistaken than I had ever known during all the years I thought he had been right. Now I understood the real tragedy, his and my own. It was the tragedy of all those who had believed in him, but would never come this far and would never understand a thing like this. I was glad his loved ones had seen him after his death, at least in their own minds and hearts. After all, life must go on whether there's any truth in it or not. Someone had to stretch the human limits to find out if there was any truth beyond self, any life beyond this one, or any God beyond belief. Christ could do no more because there is no more a man can possibly do. And what man has done is much. What is more, he did it not only for himself, but that others would not be afraid when their time came to stretch these same human limits. Now I knew and understood how one could go this far, and because I entertained no hope of going beyond Christ's own ending, I turned to face the great reality, the reality of absolute nothingness. And because she did that, she was able to span the distance between human and divine knowing. Human certitude must eventually yield to seeing when God as he is in ourselves yields to God as he is in himself. Spanning this gap between human and divine knowing is a perilous transition. It is the ultimate void to be crossed if we are to enter into the fullness of divine life. For Christ, it might have been made in a split second, or better still, 3 days. For myself, it took almost 4 months. And then she begins to understand the part of the mystery of Christ. We cannot identify ourself or any level of consciousness with the mystery God fashioned in Christ. This means that if there is any time in life we can honestly identify with Christ, it is from the position of no self, or when we have entered the gap, the void of voids, between the human and divine. Here we can truly identify with this man on the cross who willingly gave up his self, his powers, his union with God to show us that God lies beyond not only our usual notions of self, but beyond even our most divine notions as well. Until there is no self, I do not see how it is possible to have any true identity with Christ, because this ultimate identity, or no self, is necessary if we are to ever see. Until this point is reached, God remains a love within, a power above, the other half or objective pole of our own subjective consciousness, however we envision God as not self. And indeed, God is other than ourself. On the cross, he is no self. For me, at least, this is the true message and meaning of Christ, where, even more than his words, he showed us by his death what each of us will have to go through to see, to be resurrected, to be raised up beyond ourselves. And in the absence of a will, we can still live. $197. Oh, I don't see anything highlighted on 197, but I see something highlighted on 196. So here you go. As I see it, a contemplative is one who is aware of this movement. At first he strives to go with it, but later, discovering he is being moved without effort, he abandons himself to become part of it, one with it, until finally he realizes he has never been anything other than this movement himself. You are only the movement itself. And I have this written down in my notes. I just write random notes. Eventually, the bridges between transpersonal psychology, epistemology, mystical theology, and reason will be built to such strength that we will be able to look around, as St. Maximus the Confessor says we will do, and to see God everywhere, and understand why she is that bridge maker. My next video is called Replies to Objections.